Hi, as promised, this video is going to take you through the table analysis type of questions in the GMAT Focus Edition Data Insights section. What we are going to do is we are going to take a sample question and try to demonstrate how do I approach this question in terms of time management, as well as what are the things that needs to be kept in mind while solving such type of questions. This is a typical question that can come in the table analysis in data insight section. As you can see that there is a information in a tabular form about restaurants, cuisine types, price per meal, and etc. There are some lot of data given, and obviously then there is a question which has got three parts, three sentences which you are supposed to check whether they are correct or not. If they are correct, you are supposed to mark yes. If they are not correct, you are supposed to mark no. This is how the data looks like. Before we actually start solving the question, let's first of all understand what are the key things that needs to be kept in mind while attempting such questions. My first and very clear recommendation to you, jump to the questions immediately. The data is very self-explanatory generally. You really don't have to worry much of it. For example, even if you look at this question, to be honest, this data is very self-explanatory and you don't really need to read about it too much. Even if you look at just the table, you should be able to understand the data very clearly. In fact, when you start reading the question itself and then come back to the data, there is absolutely no problem. You should be able to solve most of the questions very easily. So the first requirement of the game is that you should be reading the questions first and then look at the data. Most of the time, don't waste too much time in reading the accessory information regarding the data. However, it is very important that when you are reading the questions, you read them carefully, because one thing that you need to be very careful is what exactly they are asking. For example, are they asking to calculate the simple average or the weighted average? Are they wanting you to take into account all the data involved or some specific set of data which you need to check? Okay, when you are calculating percentages, percentage more or percentage less, what is the correct base that needs to be taken while calculating the percentage? It is also very important that after you have read the question, you need to understand what relevant column we are going to be dealing with in that specific question, and then use the sorting engine. When you sort it effectively, the question time management becomes very efficient and you will take much less time in doing the calculations. Now, last thing here, while I had said even in the last video that calculators are to be used very sparsely, unless and until the options are very far apart or you think that the error of margin is very narrow, you should use the calculator if you do not have faith in your calculation prowess. However, most of these data can be done by just simple scribbling with a rough paper and etc. And therefore, my suggestion to you will be, if you are not 100% sure about your mental calculations or addition subtraction prowess, then what you should do is you should use a pen and paper, the rough paper, do some scribbling and do the calculations using mental methods instead of using the calculator. The calculator might actually take a more time than what you will be doing using your pen and paper. However, two things to be kept in mind. One, the results might be close, so therefore make sure that you note down the result and put some circle or something around it. Secondly, don't be in a hurry to erase them. There is a high chance that that same data will be used in the next part of the question as well. Let's see the question that we are dealing with. Here we are talking about the question which involves restaurants, weeks, prices and etc. Let's first read the questions first. In the question you can see the first question talks about average price per meal for all participating restaurants in the downtown neighborhood was approximately $30. Now we are talking about participating restaurants in the downtown neighborhood, which fundamentally means that now we would actually want all the downtown neighborhood restaurants to be together so that they come in a bundle, and therefore we can calculate them quickly and easily. Therefore, which sorting should we use? Very clearly we should use the sorting of the neighborhood, and therefore what you need to do is you just need to change the sorting to neighborhood. So the moment you click this, the sorting will happen and all the neighborhood will get arranged in a block, and what is going to happen will be something like this. Now what has happened is here that the moment you click the neighborhood as a sorting option, the neighborhood gets arranged in an alphabetical order, and as you can see, all the central, Chinatown, downtown, all these bundles have come together. So all the downtown has come together, northwest has come together, old town has come together, and uptown has come together. Now it is very easy to see all the downtown restaurants together. It makes sense to sort it to our requirement as per the question. Now let's look at the first question. It says the average price per meal for all participating restaurants in the downtown neighborhood was approximately $30. Now here, after reading the question, take a 30 seconds gap to think and strategize as to what they are asking. The average price per meal for all the participating restaurants in the downtown. That means we are talking about these Bendy Mats, Frank's House, Pesky Blue and Venezuela's, all the downtown restaurants and all the meals together. And now one thing that is very, very important to understand out here, and this is where your data insights and your analytical skills and your eye for detail will be checked. Please understand that while the price per meal is different for all the 4 restaurants, but the number of daily meals sold is not same. Okay, and therefore if you have to take out all the meals and the average of all the meals in all the restaurants, we practically have to calculate the weighted average pricing of all the meals, which will fundamentally mean if you have to look at the average amount of cost of the 150 meals sold in Bendemeer's, 175 at Frank's Home, and 164 at Pesky and 113 in Mexican. The way to calculate will be actually, I will calculate it as 175 into each one of them being $20 plus 164 into each one of them being $40 plus 113 into each one of them being $20 and 150, sorry we missed the first one, 150 each one of them being $40. That divided by the total number of meals, that is 150, 175, 164 and 113, that comes out to be equal to 602. That is going to be the average of all the meals served in all the downtown institutes. Keep the downtown restaurants, keep that in mind. Okay. So therefore, what are we going to get? After the calculation and etc., we are going to get 18,320 divided by 602, which is coming out to be approximately 30.4, 30 point something. And therefore, when they are asking that the average price per meal for all the participating restaurants in the downtown neighborhood was approximately 30, we agree to that, and therefore we will mark it as yes. Now, the only thing that you need to keep in mind is you keep it here. Don't erase it. Wherever you have calculated that in the notebook or the rough paper, just keep it there so that if it is required in the next step, we will be requiring it. 30.4 is my answer. Now let's look at the second part of the question. The second part says the average price per meal for the participating restaurants in the uptown neighborhood was less than the average price per meal in the downtown neighborhood. Now, it is still a question involving the neighborhoods. Therefore, we don't need to change the sorting. Okay, keeping the sorting same now, we are now supposed to calculate the uptown neighborhood. So when you are talking about the uptown neighborhood, the average that we need to calculate is again 160 into 40 plus 152 into 40 plus 151 into 40 divided by the total number of plates. In this case, it will be 160 plus 152 plus 151. Okay, and you calculate and then you check. Please remember, after doing this calculation, you now have to check with the value that you have got in the first part, that was 30.4, and check whether this is correct or not, and based on that you mark it as yes or a no. Now, interesting part of the story, in both these parts, please understand that you had to do a fair amount of calculation, and just this calculation is going to take 30 to 45 seconds. So along with reading that question, understanding and planning it, and then calculating, each one of these parts is going to take not less than 1 minute, maybe in fact slightly more. So therefore, if you remember, I had said in the first introductory video that questions with multiple parts therefore might take slightly longer period of time. Okay. And now coming to the last part, participating restaurants that included wine in the uptown neighborhood sold more meals on an average per day than participating restaurants that did not include wine with the meal. Now, we are talking about uptown, and there is only one restaurant which sells wine, okay, and it is average selling 160 daily meals. Okay, on the other hand, the uptown restaurants which does not sell wine are obviously selling 152 and 151 meals on an average, and therefore very clearly the one selling wine is selling more meals on an average than the average of the two restaurants in uptown which does not sell wine. This is something which you very clearly could do in less than 30 seconds only after understanding the question, and by simple observation you should be able to do this question. Now practically think over it. The first two questions, or rather the first two parts of the question, actually took approximately 2 to 2.5 minutes to complete. Okay. Luckily enough, the third part did not require much of a calculation, and by plain simple observation you should have cracked it, and therefore in spite of that you just now saw that this whole question required us almost 3 minutes to complete, and this is what is going to be a standard time that you will require for questions with multiple parts, right? And therefore, just quickly revising what we had discussed, we first need to see the questions. The data is most of the time self-explanatory. Once you read the question, strategize, see what sorting needs to be done, make the data easily available and readable for you, do the calculation as much precise as possible. You never know when the comparison will come close. For example, even in the second part, if the average price per meal for the uptown came very close to that in the downtown, you should not take a risk. You should do the precise calculation. Okay, and therefore, yes, if there are some questions which can be done by observation, you should definitely do that. That is the type of strategy that you need to keep while solving these questions effectively and correctly. In the next video, we'll take up another set of questions, another type of questions that come in data insights, which can be solved in the most effective manner. Thank you for watching.